The wedding invitation was addressed in her sister's handwriting. Emma recognized it before she even opened the envelope, that loopy, careless cursive Vanessa had never bothered to correct, the kind of handwriting that belonged to a woman who had never worried about being taken seriously. Emma tore it open, standing at her mailbox in the cold still in her hospital scrubs, and read the names printed on the cream cardstock. Derek James Morrison, Vanessa Claire Calloway. She read it twice. Then she folded it in half, pressed it flat against her chest like she was trying to keep something inside from getting out, and stood perfectly still in the middle of the sidewalk while a stranger walked around her. She had been with Derek for 4 years. He had been with her sister for 4 months. And now they wanted her to come watch. If that opening stopped your breath, subscribe right now, hit the bell, and follow Emma's story all the way to the end. I promise you what happens next will shake you. And drop a comment with your city. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. The code appeared on a Wednesday. That was how Emma would always mark the beginning, not the message she found on Derek's phone, not the conversation that ended 4 years, not even the invitation. The coat, Vanessa's coat, draped over the back of the kitchen chair like it belonged there, like it had always been there, like the woman it belonged to had never thought twice about leaving pieces of herself in spaces that weren't hers. Emma had walked through the front door at 9:47 p.m., still carrying the smell of the hospital on her skin, and she had seen that coat before she saw anything else in the room. Derek was at the stove. He didn't turn around. "Your sister came by," he said. "She left her jacket. She'll grab it Sunday." "Okay," Emma said. She put her bag down. She washed her hands. She sat at the kitchen table, and she stared at that coat for a long time without saying a single word. Derek brought 2 plates over. They ate. He talked about his day. She listened. The coat hung on the chair between them like a third person at the table. She should have asked that night. She knows it. She has replayed it 400 times, what she should have said, how she should have looked him in the eye and asked the one question she was already too afraid to hear answered. Instead, she ate her dinner and she loaded the dishwasher, and she told herself she was being paranoid, that she was tired, that this was what happened when you work nights and let your imagination run on an empty stomach. She told herself a lot of things that Wednesday. She believed most of them. She stopped believing them 6 weeks later. She had borrowed Derek's phone. Hers was dead. They needed a reservation confirmed, and the message was open on the screen before she'd even looked for anything. It was just there, bright and unavoidable, the way truth always arrives, not when you're searching, but the moment you are least prepared. She read it once. She read it again. Her hands were completely steady. That was the thing she remembered most. Not what the message said, not the words, but the absolute steadiness of her own hands holding that phone, like her body had made a decision her mind hadn't caught up to yet. She set the phone down on the nightstand. She walked to the bathroom. She closed the door. She turned on the cold tap and pressed both palms flat on either side of the sink and looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. She was 32 years old. She had given 4 years to this man. She had worked double shifts and missed holidays and rearranged her entire schedule around his. She had been the woman who stayed, the woman who showed up, the woman who made it work. And her sister had walked into her kitchen on a Wednesday afternoon and walked back out with everything Emma had. She turned off the tap, dried her hands, opened the bathroom door. Derek was sitting up in bed. He saw her face. And she watched. This was the part she would never forget, the part that hurt in a completely different way than the message had. She watched the guilt move across his expression like a shadow before he had time to make it disappear. "Emma, how long?" she said. Not a question, a number she was owed. He looked at the blanket. "Emma, it's not." Derek, still calm, still steady, still that absolute terrible stillness. "How long?" He looked up at her. 4 months. 4 months. She had made his coffee for 4 months. She had worried about him for 4 months. She had lain awake at 3 a.m. thinking she was losing her mind, that she was paranoid, that she was imagining things for 4 months. "You need to leave," she said. "Tonight, right now. Please. I am not asking you." Her voice did not rise. It dropped. "I am telling you to get your keys and leave this apartment." And Derek, she stopped him at the door. He turned around. She looked at him for the last time as the man she had loved. "Don't call me. Don't text me. And when you see my sister," her voice cracked just once like a branch under too much weight, "tell her I said congratulations." She called Vanessa at noon the next day. She had rehearsed nothing. She had no script, no plan, no prepared speech. She called because she needed to hear her sister's voice try to explain this. She needed to hear what shape the excuse would take. Vanessa picked up on the second ring. "I know," Emma said. Silence. Then a breath. Then Emma, a basuo. "I am so suo. Don't. Short. Clean. Don't do the apology right now. Just tell me one thing. Was it happening when you were at my apartment the Wednesdays? Was it already, Emma? Answer me, Vanessa." A longer silence. The kind that is its own answer. Emma closed her eyes. "I love him," Vanessa said finally, and her voice was soft and genuinely pained and completely, utterly sincere. "I didn't want this to happen. I didn't choose to." "You didn't choose," Emma repeated quietly. "Right. You borrowed my clothes for 20 years, and you didn't choose that either. You took Mom's jewelry, and you didn't choose that. You have never chosen anything in your life because choosing requires accepting that you are actually taking something that belongs to someone else." Her voice was very even, very controlled, like a blade held flat. "I hope he's worth it. I genuinely hope so, because if he isn't, I don't want you to come to me about it. Not this time." She hung up. She did not cry until the following Tuesday at 2 a.m. alone in her car, in the hospital parking garage between shifts, when something by accident came on the radio that she and Derek had listened to on their first road trip together. She sat in the dark and she cried for 11 minutes. She checked the time because she had to be back on the floor. 11 minutes. Then she wiped her face, checked her reflection in the visor mirror, and went back inside. Nobody knew, nobody at work, nobody in her building, none of the friends who texted occasionally and who she always told were fine. Yes, great, just busy. Emma Calloway had been fine and great and just busy for her entire adult life. Being devastated was simply the same performance with different music playing underneath. 3 weeks after the phone call with Vanessa, the invitation arrived. She stood at her mailbox and opened it and read the names and folded it against her chest and stood on the sidewalk while the world moved around her. She brought it inside. She put it on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a sunflower that Vanessa herself had brought back from a trip 4 years ago. She looked at it every morning when she made coffee, every evening when she came home. She did not know yet what she was going to do with it. She only knew she needed to look at it. She needed the full weight of it to be real and present and unavoidable, because the alternative, putting it away, not thinking about it moving forward, felt like surrendering to a version of herself she was not willing to become, the version that disappeared quietly, the version that let this happen and said nothing and showed up to the wedding with a gift from the registry and smiled and wished them well and went home alone. She was not that woman. She was not sure yet what woman she was going to be, but she was not that one. On a Thursday night, 3 weeks after the invitation, Emma was on the number 14 bus home from her shift. It was late. The bus was nearly empty. She had her hospital badge around her neck and her feet ached, and she was doing what she did every night now, which was sitting inside her own head, replaying the last 4 months, looking for the moments she had been too blind or too trusting or too patient to see clearly. She didn't notice them get on at Brecker Street until the younger one turned around. Mid-20s, thin-faced, the kind of energy that was all motion and calculation, eyes moving over the bus the way a hand moves over something it's deciding whether to take. He looked at Emma directly, looked at her badge, and smiled. It was the kind of smile that communicated that he believed her being alone on this bus at this hour was an invitation. "Long shift, nurse," he said. Emma looked at him without expression. "Turn around." He tilted his head. "Excuse me." "I said turn around." Same tone she used with patients who were being difficult. Flat, certain, non-negotiable. "You're going to sit forward and mind your own business, or you're going to have a very long night." The younger man's smile widened. He started to stand. The older one next to him, heavy-shouldered, silent, up to this point, put a hand on his arm. "Easy," he said low. The younger one ignored it. He was fully standing now, one hand on the seat back, and the bus wasn't moving fast enough, and the driver couldn't see, and there was nobody else on this vehicle who was going to be of any use, and Emma's pulse was controlled and steady, and she was already calculating, "Sit down." 2 words, quiet, no raised voice, no edge, no performance of authority, just the absolute complete certainty of a man who has never in his life had to repeat himself. Emma looked up. He was standing at the front of the bus, tall, dark-haired, maybe 45, dressed simply, but with the particular quality of a man who has never needed to announce himself. He wasn't looking at Emma. He was looking at the younger man in the aisle. And the quality of that look was something Emma had no immediate word for. It was not aggressive, not theatrical. It was simply final, the way a door being closed is final. The younger man sat down, immediately, without a word. The older one beside him turned forward and did not move again. The tall man looked at Emma then, steady, direct. "You're all right," he said. "I had it handled," Emma said. Something crossed his face. Not offense, not amusement, something she couldn't classify. "I know," he said, and he said it like he meant it, and then he sat back down and faced forward and did not look at her again. She got off at her stop. She walked the 2 blocks home. She stood outside her building for a moment in the cold, breathing the night air, and she thought about that voice, 2 words, effort, total silence. And she thought about the way he had looked at her and said, "I know," and meant it. She went upstairs. She stood in front of the refrigerator. She looked at the invitation. She looked at it for a long time. And then for the first time in weeks, Emma Calloway thought about something other than Derek Morrison and her sister, Vanessa. She thought about a man on a bus who had looked at her and not seen a woman who was falling apart. He had just seen a woman. She did not know his name yet. She did not know that he had been on that bus on purpose. She did not know that he had known Derek Morrison's name for over a year before she ever said it aloud to him over coffee, because the second meeting at the pharmacy was not an accident either. None of it was, not one single moment of it. But that knowledge was still ahead of her, still waiting patient and inevitable, like a trap that is most dangerous, precisely because it is comfortable. All she knew that night was this: she was 32 years old, and she was tired of being invisible. And someone had just without trying, without even intending to made her feel the opposite. That was the moment Emma Calloway became useful to Dante Ricci. That was also, though she would not understand this for a long time, the moment Dante Ricci began to be in danger of something he had not planned for at all. The text came at 7:14 the next morning. Emma was standing at her kitchen counter, coffee in one hand, the invitation still on the refrigerator, directly in her line of sight, when her phone lit up with a number she didn't recognize. No name, no introduction, just 6 words: the pharmacy on Crane. 10 o'clock. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she typed back, "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "The bus." She set her phone face down on the counter, picked up her coffee, looked at the invitation, looked at the phone, drank the coffee. At 9:52, she put on her coat and walked to the pharmacy on Crane Street. She told herself it was curiosity. She told herself it was because she was a woman who didn't like unanswered questions, who didn't like loose ends, who needed to look at a thing directly before she could file it away and move on. She told herself a lot of things on that 8-minute walk. None of them were entirely true, and some part of her knew it, but she had learned a long time ago that the stories we tell ourselves to get out the door are not always required to be honest. Sometimes they just need to be functional. He was already there when she arrived, standing at the counter, speaking quietly to the pharmacist, and there was something about the way even a routine transaction looked when Dante Ricci was involved, a quality of absolute control of everything proceeding exactly as expected, as if the world had simply agreed to organize itself around him. He turned when she walked in, saw her immediately, and something in his expression shifted. Not surprise, not relief, something more careful than either. "You came," he said. "You knew I would," Mama said. He didn't deny it. "Coffee. You have 5 minutes to explain how you got my number before I leave." He looked at her steadily. "Your hospital badge has your employee ID. Your hospital's directory is public. Your name is on your mailbox." Emma was quiet for a moment. "That's thorough. I'm a thorough person. That's either impressive or alarming." "It can be both," he said. "Coffee?" She went for coffee, not because he'd justified himself, he hadn't, not really, but because the answer had been honest, and honesty from a man who clearly didn't traffic in it by default was worth something. She filed that observation carefully in the back of her mind, in the section she kept for things that seemed like assets, but might turn out to be liabilities. They sat across from each other in the coffee shop 2 doors down, and Emma watched him the way she watched everyone, with the particular quiet attentiveness of a woman who had learned that most of what people communicated had nothing to do with what they were saying. He was composed. He was deliberate. He ordered without looking at the menu, and he didn't fill silence the way most people did, nervously, compulsively rushing words in to cover the discomfort. He sat in silence the way a man sits in a room he owns. "What do you do?" she asked. "Business," he said. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now that wouldn't make you leave." She looked at him. "That's either honest or it's a line." "Also both," he said, and his mouth moved in that way, not quite a smile, something more restrained and more genuine than a smile, and Emma felt it before she could stop herself. That pull, the specific, dangerous pull of a person who interests you before you've had the chance to decide whether they should. She looked down at her cup. "I'm going to be direct with you. I'd expect nothing less. I just ended a 4-year relationship. My sister is marrying the man I was with. I received the wedding invitation 19 days ago, and I have not cried about it in front of another human being, and I am not going to start now, but what that means is that I am," she paused, choosing the word carefully, "vulnerable, in a way I don't usually allow. And vulnerable people make poor decisions about who they give their time to. So I need you to tell me something real. Not business, not managed, something real." Dante was quiet for a long moment. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't read at all, which was unusual. Emma could read almost anyone. Then he said, "My father died when I was 11. He owed money to a man he thought was his friend. When he couldn't pay, that man took everything. The house, the business. My mother had to move us into her sister's apartment and work 2 jobs for 6 years. I watched her do that." A pause. "I decided when I was 11 that I would never be in a position where another man held power over anything I cared about. I have built my entire life around that decision. And I have been successful. And I am also," he stopped, looked at his hands, "alone in a way that has nothing to do with whether other people are present." Emma did not move, did not speak. "That's real," he said. "That's the thing you asked for." She looked at him for a long time. Something in her chest rearranged itself slightly, like furniture shifted in a room. "The man your father owed money to," she said. "Did you ever find him?" Dante met her eyes. "I'm still looking," he said. She should have heard it. Later, she would understand that the answer had been right there, compressed into 3 words, sitting in plain sight like something hidden in an optical illusion. But she was listening for emotion, not information, and emotion was what he'd given her, calibrated and perfectly delivered, and she was 32 years old and exhausted and lonely, and sitting across from a man who had just told her something that sounded like the truest thing anyone had said to her in months. She finished her coffee. He asked her to dinner. She said yes, and this time she didn't manufacture an exit strategy, which was the first concrete sign that her defenses were doing what defenses do. When they are worn down slowly enough, they stop announcing themselves. Dinner was 3 days later. The restaurant was quiet and expensive, and he was there before her and stood when she arrived, which was such a simple, ordinary courtesy that it shouldn't have meant anything at all, and yet Emma had to stop herself from reacting to it because Derek had stopped doing that kind of thing about 2 years in, and she had pretended not to notice, and apparently she had noticed very much. They talked for 4 hours. She didn't plan to. She never planned to. And then it was midnight, and she was still sitting there, and the restaurant was nearly empty, and she was in the middle of telling him something about a patient from 3 weeks ago, some small, specific detail about what it felt like to be the person in the room when someone received news they weren't ready for, and she stopped mid-sentence because she realized she had never told this story to anyone before. Not to Derek, not to Vanessa, not to the colleagues who worked beside her every day. It was a story she had kept entirely inside herself, and she was telling it now to a man she had known for 6 days, and she couldn't fully explain why, except that he was listening in that particular way of his, completely without interruption, without the slightly unfocused look that most people get when they're waiting for their turn. And something about that quality of attention had simply unlocked her. She stopped talking. He didn't fill the silence. "I'm oversharing," she said. "No," he said. "You're talking to someone who's actually listening. It feels like oversharing because you are not used to it." She looked at him. "You're very sure of a lot of things." "Not everything," he said. And the way he said it, quiet, precise, with that barely visible shift behind his eyes, made her feel that she was the specific thing he was not sure about, that she was the variable in an equation he had otherwise already solved. "Tell me about your family," she said. He was quiet for half a beat. "My mother lives in Florida now. She remarried. She's happy." A pause. "I don't have siblings. I have people who work for me and people who work against me, and the line between them is occasionally unclear." "That's cryptic." "It's accurate. Dante." She said his name deliberately, the way you say a name when you want someone to understand that you're not making conversation. You're making a point. "What kind of business?" He looked at her directly. "The kind where being honest with you right now would change this dinner in a way I'm not prepared for." Her heart rate did something she didn't authorize. Not fear, something more complicated. "That should make me leave," she said. "I know. I'm still here." "I know that too." She looked down at her glass, then back up. "Derek's last name is Morrison," she said. "You reacted when I said it. 4 days ago at that coffee shop, I saw it." The table went very still. Not Dante. Dante didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't rearrange his expression by a single degree. But something between them shifted the way pressure shifts in a room when a window is open somewhere else in the building. Emma felt it as clearly as she felt anything. "I told you the name was familiar," he said. "You told me it was common." That was a deflection, not an answer. She kept her eyes on his. "Do you know Derek Morrison?" "I know of his family," Dante said slowly and deliberately, the way a person speaks when they are choosing the border between truth and the version of truth that is safe to offer. "His father and I have a history." "What kind of history?" "An old one." "Dante." "Emma." He said her name the same way she had said his, like a point being made. "There are things I need to tell you, and I will tell you, but not tonight, because tonight is the first time in I don't know how long that I have sat across from someone and felt." He stopped, set his jaw, started again. "I need one more night of this being what it appears to be before it becomes what it actually is. I'm asking you to give me that." The confession was so unexpected, so unguarded and immediate, and lacking the managed quality of everything else he had said, that Emma sat with it for a full 10 seconds without responding. "One more night," she said finally. "Yes." "And then you tell me everything." "Yes." "Everything, Dante. Not the edited version, not the version that makes you easier to accept. Everything." He held her gaze. "Everything," he said. She nodded once, picked up her glass. And they finished dinner, and he walked her to her car and said goodnight, and she drove home with her hands steady on the wheel and her mind running at a speed it hadn't reached in months, because she was not stupid. She had never been stupid, and she knew with the precise clinical certainty of a woman who had spent 8 years reading situations accurately that she was sitting at the edge of something very large. She just couldn't see the bottom yet. She didn't sleep that night. Not really. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about the way he'd said an old one and the way his eyes had gone to a specific careful distance when she'd said Derek's name, and the way he'd asked for one more night as though he already knew that what came after it would be harder to sit through. At 3 a.m. she got up and made tea. She stood at the kitchen counter and looked at the invitation on the refrigerator and thought about Victor Morrison, Derek's father. She had met the man 4 times. Large, loud. The kind of man who dominated a room by taking up more space in it than was strictly necessary. Derek had talked about him with a mixture of admiration and fear that Emma had always found slightly troubling. Dad knows people, Dad gets things handled. You don't cross Dad. She thought about a boy who was 11 years old watching his mother go to work 2 jobs because a man took everything his father had. She thought about Dante saying, "I'm still looking," and she felt something cold move through her that had nothing to do with the hour, or the kitchen, or the tea. She called him at 7 a.m. He picked up on the first ring, which meant he was already awake, which meant he had not slept either. "Victor Morrison took your father's business," she said without preamble. Silence. Then, "Yes. Derek is his son." "Yes. And I am all..." She stopped. The thought completed itself slowly, like a sentence being written one word at a time by hands she couldn't see. "I'm the woman Derek left behind. I'm the ex-girlfriend. I am the person who has the most obvious, the most documented." The most publicly legible reason to want to, she stopped it again. Dante, tell me right now, why did you get on that bus? The silence this time lasted exactly 4 seconds. She counted. I had been watching Derek Morrison's movements for several months, he said. You were in his life, then abruptly you weren't. I wanted to understand what been. You wanted to understand why, she repeated. Her voice was very flat. Or you wanted to know if I was usable. No answer, which was its own answer. Emma pressed her hand flat on the counter. She breathed. In, out, controlled. The way she always was, the way she had always made herself be the way she had been every time she had needed to remain functional in the presence of something that was trying to take her apart. Get out of my life, she said. Emma, I want you to hear me very clearly. Her voice did not shake. It never shook. I have been used as a backdrop in other people's stories for my entire adult life. I was used by my sister. I was used by Derek. And now I am supposed to be what, upon a distraction, a piece you move because it's convenient. She laughed once short and hard. Oh, me. No, absolutely not. Do not contact me again. She hung up. She stood into the kitchen. The invitation was on the refrigerator. The tea was going cold in her hand. The morning light was coming through the window, and everything was exactly as it had been before, and yet something was different in a way she couldn't name, yet something had shifted in a direction she hadn't chosen, and she was so tired, so entirely bone-deeply tired of things being moved around her without her permission. She put the tea down, got dressed, went to work. He did not text. He did not call. He did not appear at the pharmacy or the coffee shop or any of the other places she caught herself half expecting him. 4 days passed. On the 5th day, she was leaving the hospital after a double shift walking to the parking structure, and she found an envelope on her car, cream-colored. Her name on the front in handwriting she didn't recognize, not Vanessa's loopy cursive, something else entirely. Controlled. Precise. The handwriting of a man who thought carefully before committing anything to paper. She opened it. Inside was a single photograph. The coloring had that specific warmth of photos from the early 80s, the slight fade around the edges. A man and a woman standing outside a small business, a sign above the door she couldn't fully read. The man was maybe 30, dark-haired, dark-eyed, with a quality to his face that she recognized before she fully understood why. She turned the photograph over. On the back, in that same controlled handwriting, this is what was taken. I thought you should know what you were deciding about. She stood in the parking structure holding that photograph for a long time. Then she took out her phone and called the number she had told herself she was done calling. He picked up immediately. I'm not forgiving you, she said. I know, he said, and I'm not agreeing to anything. I know. But I want to know the whole story, all of it, everything you said you'd tell me and then didn't. Her jaw was tight. Not because I'm helping you, not because I'm a piece in your board, because I deserve to know who I've been sitting across from. A pause, then quietly, where are you? Hospital parking structure. Level 3. I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He was there in 14. She didn't comment on that. She just looked at him when he got out of the car and walked toward her, and she held up the photograph and said, start from the beginning. And Dante, her eyes were steady on his. If you lie to me once I walk, and I don't come back. Are we clear? He looked at her for a long moment. In the flat fluorescent light of the parking structure, without the softness of restaurant candlelight or the ambient noise of coffee shops, she could see him more clearly. The lines of his face, the set of his jaw, the thing in his eyes that she had been trying to classify since the first moment on the bus and had never quite managed. It was only now in this hard, honest light that she finally understood what it was. He was a man who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and he was not sure for the first time in a very long time whether he wanted to put it down. Victor Morrison, he said, destroyed my family, and I have spent the last 20 years building everything I have for one purpose. Derek was going to be the way I got to him. He paused, and then you said Derek's name, and the plane, he stopped, looked at her. The plane stopped being simple. Mouth didn't move. I'm not a good man, Dante said. I want to be clear about that. I have done things to survive, and to build what I have that I cannot dress up in comfortable language. What I came to you with was strategy. What I am standing here with right now," he exhaled, "is something I did not plan for and cannot fully explain." She looked at him, long, searching, looking for the performance, for the layer of management that everything else he said had carried. She didn't find it. That scared her more than anything else so far. "You should know," she said very quietly, "that I am not a woman who gets used twice." "I know," he said. "Then you understand what you're asking." "Yes. And you're asking anyway." He held her gaze. "Yes." Emma looked down at the photograph in her hands, the man outside the small business, the sign above the door, the woman beside him. The particular quality of happiness in a photograph taken before the thing that ends it. She thought about 4 months of a coat on a chair. She thought about an invitation in gold lettering. She thought about 11 minutes in a parking garage crying over a song on the radio. She thought about being 32 years old and tired and invisible, and what it had felt like, even briefly, even falsely, to be seen. "Tell me everything," she said, "and we'll figure out the rest after." He told her everything in the parking structure, standing under fluorescent lights, with the photograph between them, and it took 40 minutes, and by the end of it, Emma's tea was completely cold, and her feet had stopped hurting, and she wasn't thinking about being tired anymore. Victor Morrison had been her father's business partner. That was how Dante began. Not his enemy first, his partner. 2 men who had built something together from nothing, who had shaken hands and signed their names side by side and believed the way men believe things when they are young and still trust the world to be roughly fair, that the agreement meant something. It had meant nothing. When the business became worth taking, Victor took it. Legally, technically, through a clause buried in a contract that Dante's father had signed without reading closely enough, because he had trusted the man sitting across from him. The courts had sided with Victor. The appeals had gone nowhere. Dante's father had died 4 years later. Not dramatically, not violently, just quietly and too young. The way men die when they have lost the thing they built themselves around. Dante had been 15. "I spent the next 20 years making sure I would never be in a position to lose like that again," he said. "And then I spent the last 3 making sure Victor Morrison would understand what it felt like." Emma looked at him. "Derek," she said. "Derek is the heir to everything Victor has. The company, the portfolio, the reputation. Victor has spent his entire life building something to pass to his son." A pause. "I was going to take it. Not illegally. The same way it was taken from my family, through leverage, through contracts, through making someone an offer they believe is beneficial right up until the moment it isn't. And you needed me because I needed proximity to Derek. You were the clearest path. Ex-girlfriend nursing a betrayal, obvious motivation." He said it flatly without softening it, because she had told him not to, and she was beginning to understand a man who took instructions seriously when he chose to follow them. That was the calculation. "Was," she said. "You used the past tense." He looked at her for a moment. "Yes." "What changed it?" "You," he said simply. "You changed it. The way you look at me like you're running a full diagnostic. The way you said I had it handled on that bus when anyone else would have been grateful. The way you sat across from me at dinner and told me a story you had never told anyone, and then caught yourself and named it out loud instead of pretending it hadn't happened." He stopped. "You're not a piece on a board. You are inconveniently a person." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Something in her chest did the thing it had been doing around him, that slight, unauthorized rearrangement furniture moving in a room she thought she had locked. "I need you to understand something," she said. "What Victor did to your family, what Derek and my sister did to me, those are 2 completely different things, and I will not let you use my anger to service yours." "I know. I mean it, Dante. I know you mean it." He looked at her steadily. "I'm not asking you to be part of a plan. I'm asking you to." He stopped, and for the first time she saw him search for words, genuinely search without the composed certainty he wore like a second skin. "I'm asking you to keep having dinner with me. That's all. No strategy. Just dinner." She looked at him for a long time. "Dinner," she said. "Dinner. You understand that if I find out you've lied to me, You walk, he said. I remember. She nodded once, handed him back the photograph, walked to her car, got in, sat there for a moment with her hands on the wheel, staring at the concrete wall in front of her, thinking about the line between knowing better and doing it anyway. Then she drove home. The dinners continued. 3, then 4, then 5. Each one longer than the last, each one tipping slightly further from something Emma could classify as cautious into something she had no clean word for. He made her laugh genuinely twice a week now instead of the startled once she'd managed the first night. She told him things, not everything, but things she hadn't said aloud to anyone. He listened with that complete, unhurried attention of his and asked the right questions at the right moments, and she was self-aware enough to know that she was falling and experienced enough to know she was falling towards something that had not yet fully revealed itself. And then on a Sunday night, 11 days after the parking structure, her phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. Vanessa. Emma looked at the screen for 4 rings. Then she answered. I need to see you, Vanessa said. No. Emma, please, I'm not calling about Derek. It's something else, something you need to know. Vanessa, I have nothing to say to you right now that would be, it's about the man you've been seeing. Emma went very still. What man? Don't do that. Don't pretend. Vanessa's voice was sharp, but underneath the sharpness was something else, something that sounded close to fear. Derek told me. He saw you 2 nights ago at Marchetti's. He recognized him, Emma. He knows who that man is. The room shifted. Derek doesn't know me. Derek knows Dante Ricci. A pause that landed like a dropped weight. Emma, his father, knows Dante Ricci. Victor Morrison and Dante Ricci have been there, is a history there that is not safe. That man is not who you think he is. He is dangerous in a way that... Vanessa. Emma's voice was controlled, but her jaw was tight. You don't get to warn me about dangerous men. You lost that right when you were sleeping with mine. I know I did. I know. And Vanessa's voice cracked just slightly in a way that would have moved Emma 4 months ago, and now landed somewhere complicated and unresolved. But I am still your sister, and I am terrified right now. Derek, as he told his father. Victor knows. Emma, if Victor Morrison thinks you are involved with Dante Ricci, you are in the middle of something that has nothing to do with you. You need to get out. Emma hung up. She sat with the silence for exactly 2 minutes. Then she called Dante. Did you know Derek saw us at the restaurant? She asked the moment he picked up. A short pause, too short to mean nothing. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I was managing it. You were managing it. Her voice was very even, very dangerous. Dante, what does that mean? What does managing it mean? It means I knew Victor would find out, and I was preparing for the next step, and I did not want to alarm you before you had what... She stood up. She couldn't stay seated. Before you had decided what version of the truth to give me, before you had edited it into something I would accept. She pressed her hand flat on the kitchen counter. I told you once, I said it clearly. One lie and I walk. I didn't lie. Withholding is lying. Don't insult me with the distinction. Emma, his voice dropped low and urgent. Listen to me. Victor Morrison is going to make a move. He's going to try to use you not because of me, but because you are Derek's ex-girlfriend and because you are currently an exposed variable in a situation he wants to control. If he reaches out to you or if Derek reaches out to you, you do not engage. You do not... I don't take orders from you, she said. I know, I'm asking. There's a difference. She breathed. In, out. Did you ever intend to tell me Derek had seen us? A pause, shorter this time. Yes, tomorrow. I had a meeting tonight that I needed to. Tomorrow, she said, and the word carried everything she didn't say after it. She hung up for the 2nd time that week. She did not sleep. She lay in the dark, and she thought about Victor Morrison's face, that large, loud presence. The man Derek said got things handled, and she thought about Dante at 15, watching everything go. And she thought about herself 32 years old, standing at the intersection of 2 men's history that she had not consented to be part of. The next morning, Derek called. She almost didn't answer. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, and then she thought, no, I want to hear this. I want to hear exactly what he says. Emma. His voice was the same. That was the disorienting thing. It was just his voice. The same voice she had heard every day for 4 years. Warm and slightly careful the way it always was when he wanted something. I need to talk to you about something important. On then talk, she said. Not on the phone. Can we meet just half an hour? Coffee. I need to tell you something about the man you've been seeing. Dante Ricci is, I know who he is, she said. A pause. You know? I know, she said again. Emma, do you understand what he does? What his organization, Derek. She said his name the same way she had in that bedroom 14 weeks ago, flat and final. You gave up the right to be concerned about my choices the morning I found your phone. Do not call me again. She hung up. 3 calls in 12 hours. 3 people managing her. Dante with his withholding. Vanessa with her fear. Derek with his manufactured concern that she recognized immediately as his father's hand, not his own instinct. She was so tired of being managed. She went to work. She did her shift. She was excellent at her job, as always, in the way that a person is excellent at the thing they do when the rest of their life is in free fall, because work was the one territory where Emma Calloway was completely unambiguously in control. She made decisions. People trusted them. Nobody moved pieces around her without her knowledge. She came home at 6. Victor Morrison was standing outside her building. She recognized him from the 4 times she had met him over 4 years. Larger than she remembered, or perhaps just more present, without Derek's nervous energy beside him softening the effect. He was wearing a dark coat, and he had his hands in his pockets, and he was looking at her the way a man looks at something he has already factored into an equation. Emma stopped walking, 6 feet between them. Ms. Calloway, he said. Mr. Morrison. I apologize for coming unannounced. No, you don't, she said. He looked at her for a moment. Then something shifted in his face, not quite respect, but the recalibration that occurs when a person is more than expected. No, he agreed. I don't. I need 5 minutes of your time. You don't have them. Dante Ricci has been planning to destroy my family for 3 years, Victor said. And he said it without drama, without performance, just flatly and directly the way a man speaks when he believes the facts alone are sufficient. He used your relationship with my son, your ending of it, as an entry point. He has been cultivating you deliberately. Whatever you feel for him, whatever he has told you, it began as strategy. You deserve to know that. Emma looked at him steadily. The cold air was sharp between them. I already know, she said. Victor blinked, one single break in the composure. I know. She held his gaze. He told me, which is more than you would have done. She shifted her bag on her shoulder. And here's what I want you to know, Mr. Morrison. You are standing outside my home. You came here to warn me so that I would walk away from Dante, which would eliminate one of his advantages. You are not here for me. You are here for yourself. So let me save us both the time, whatever you think you can offer me, whatever leverage you think my situation gives you. I'm not interested. I am not a piece in this. I was not a piece when your son and my sister were using me as one, and I am not a piece now. Victor stared at her. Go home, she said, and she walked past him and into her building and did not look back, and her hands did not shake once. Inside the elevator they shook, both of them for the entire 4-floor ride trembling with the specific adrenaline that is not fear but its close relative, the feeling that arrives after you have stood your ground and only afterward allows your body to register how close it was. She called Dante from her apartment. He picked up on the first ring. Victor was outside your building, and he said before she could speak. I know, I'm sorry. I should have anticipated he'd move this fast. You need to tell me everything, Emma said. Not the version you gave me in the parking structure. Not the edited one, the full picture. All of it. What your organization is, what Victor has done, what you plan to do, and what, she stopped, what I actually am in this, the real answer. A long pause. Come to my apartment, he said. No. Emma. Neutral ground, she said. The coffee shop on Crane. 1 hour. She was there in 40 minutes. He was already there, which no longer surprised her. He looked, and this was new. This was the first time she had seen this slightly undone. Not dramatically. Just a button undone at his collar, and a tension in his jaw that his usual composure wasn't fully covering. She sat down. She said nothing. She waited. My organization manages significant assets, he said. Some of those assets are acquired through means that operate outside conventional legal frameworks. He met her eyes. You understand what that means? Yes, she said. Victor Morrison's company launders money through a network of shell investments. I have documentation. I have been building a case not for law enforcement, because law enforcement in this city is not a reliable instrument when Victor is involved, but for a private move, a takeover, a hostile acquisition that would strip him of the company the same way he stripped my father. He paused. Derek's upcoming marriage to your sister gives Victor a significant PR cover. The image of a settled, legitimate family man makes the timing of my move more difficult, which is why I needed Derek destabilized before the wedding. Emma was very still, and I was going to destabilize him. Yes. How? He looked at her directly. By being seen. By making it clear that the woman he left, the woman your sister took from, had moved on. And not quietly, that she was with someone. Someone Victor would recognize. It would agitate Derek. Derek agitated makes mistakes. Derek making mistakes gives me an opening. He stopped. That was the plan. Was, she said again. Is, he said, and the honesty of it hit harder than the lie would have. The plan is still the plan. What's changed is... He exhaled, looked down at his hands. What's changed is that executing it now would require using you in a way I am not willing to do. And that is not a position I have been in before. I have not cared before about the people I used. She looked at him for a long time. Say that again. I don't want to use you, he said. I'm telling you that clearly, not because the plan failed, because you are, he stopped. You are not available to me as a piece. I don't know how to explain it better than that. Emma sat with it. The coffee was getting cold between her hands. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, indifferent and continuous people moving past the window with their own entire complicated lives. I have a question, she said. Ask it. If you complete this, if you take everything from Victor Morrison, what happens to Derek? Dante was quiet for a moment. He loses his inheritance, his position, his future with the company. And Vanessa, Emma said, who will have just married him? Another pause, this one longer. Yes, Dante said. Emma nodded slowly. The thing she was feeling was complicated, and she didn't try to simplify it. Part of it was satisfaction, small and ugly and real. Part of it was something else, something that felt almost like reluctance. I need you to know something, she said. My sister hurt me. Derek hurt me. And there is a part of me, a real part. Not a part I'm ashamed of, just a real part that wants them to understand what it costs to take from someone. She paused. But I am not going to be the instrument of that. If it happens because of what Victor Morrison did and because of your plan and your leverage, not because of me. I understand, Dante said. She looked at him. Because here's what I need you to understand, Dante. Not just here, understand. She leaned forward slightly. I am not going to walk away from this, from you. I don't fully know why yet, and I don't need you to have an answer ready for that, but I am not walking away. The only thing I need is that you stop managing me. Stop calculating what to tell me and when. Stop being 3 steps ahead of every conversation we have. If I find out there is one more thing you knew and chose the timing of revealing, I will not yell at you. I will simply not be there anymore, and I will not come back. Dante looked at her for a long moment. That thing was in his eyes again, the thing she had finally identified in the parking structure, the thing that was heavy and old and being held by a man who was exhausted from holding it. My father's name was Marco, he said, and it was so unexpected, so completely off script from everything that had come before it that Emma didn't move. He called me Dante because he loved the inferno. He said the whole point of it was that you had to go all the way through hell before you came out the other side. He paused. I've been in the middle part for a long time. Emma felt something in her throat she didn't authorize. What was his business? She asked quietly. A restaurant, Dante said. Nothing dramatic, a small Italian restaurant in a building he owned. It was worth something because the land under it was worth something, and Victor wanted the land. He looked at the table. My father's name was on the sign. I used to sit in the window after school and watch him work the room. He knew everyone's name. He knew what everyone ordered. A pause. Victor tore the building down. There's a parking garage there now. Emma was very quiet. I'm telling you this, Dante said. Not because it changes the plan, but because you asked me to stop managing what I give you. So this is what I'm giving you, the actual thing, the thing under all the strategy. She reached across the table. She put her hand over his. She did not say anything because there was nothing to say that was large enough, and she understood in her bones that sometimes a person who has been carrying something for a very long time does not need words. They need someone to simply acknowledge the weight. He looked down at her hand on his, then up at her face. I told you you weren't what I expected, he said. I remember. I'm beginning to understand why that's a problem, he said. Because you can't use someone She stopped. He held her gaze. Neither of them finished the sentence. Emma took her hand back, picked up her cup, drank the cold coffee without making a face about it. Okay, she said. Okay, here's what we do. She set the cup down. You tell me the plan, all of it, every step, and I decide what role I'm willing to play, not what's convenient for your timeline, not what's optimal for your leverage, what I consent to. She looked at him. Those are my terms. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he said, You want to be at the table. I want to be at the table, she said. That changes things significantly. I know, Emma said. That's the point. He was quiet for a moment. Then something happened that she hadn't seen before. He let out a breath that was not controlled, not managed, just a real breath, the kind that belongs to a person putting something down. All right, he said. All right, she said. And somewhere across the city, Victor Morrison was on the phone with his son, and the plan he had built for 20 years was doing what plans do when a variable refuses to behave as calculated. It was shifting in a direction he could not yet see, towards something none of them, not Victor, not Derek, not even Dante, who had planned everything, had accounted for. The variable had a name, and she had just asked to sit at the table. The plan, as Dante laid it out over the next 2 hours, was elegant in the way that truly dangerous things often are clean on the surface, with most of the weight hidden underneath. Victor Morrison's company, Meridian Capital, had been processing money for a network of investors who did not exist. Shell corporations registered in 4 different states, all feeding into legitimate real estate developments, all bearing Victor's signature on the foundational documents. Dante had been building the paper trail for 3 years. He had the contracts, the wire transfers, the registered agents who had since disappeared and could be traced. What he did not have, what he had been one step away from for 8 months, was the internal communications, emails, memos, the kind of document that showed not just what had been done, but that Victor had known exactly what he was doing when he did it. Derek has access, Dante said. As the named heir and co-signatory on 3 of the parent accounts, he has login credentials for the internal document management system. He doesn't use them, he's never been operationally involved, but they exist and they're active. Emma listened. She had her hands wrapped around a fresh cup of coffee, and her expression was the one she wore when she was processing, not blank, not reactive, just completely and fully present in a way that most people could not sustain. You need those credentials, she said. Yes. And you were going to get them how? Through me somehow getting close to Derek again. Through you attending the wedding, Dante said. Being present, visible, creating enough agitation in Derek that he would make a mistake in my direction. He paused. That was the original version. And now I'm telling you the original version, he said, because you asked to be at the table. And sitting at the table means knowing the plan you're no longer part of so that you can tell me whether there is a version of it you would agree to. Emma was quiet for a moment. You want me to go to the wedding? I want to know if you're willing to. Not as bait, she said immediately. No, he agreed. Not as bait, as yourself, as a woman who received an invitation from her sister and chose to attend with her head up. He held her gaze. You told me the night I asked you about the invitation that you didn't want them to see what it did to you, that you wanted to be able to look at them and not, he paused. Those were your words, not mine. Emma looked at him steadily. He was right. She hated that he was right. She hated even more that he had remembered it verbatim, had stored it, and used it now with such precision because it meant that from the very beginning, he had been listening not just with interest, but with purpose. Even now, even after everything he had told her, she could not be entirely certain where the strategy ended and the genuine thing began. She was beginning to think that in Dante Ricci, the two might be permanently, irreversibly intertwined. If I go to that wedding, she said carefully, I go because I decide to, not because it serves your timeline. Yes. And you will not make a move, not one that uses my presence there without telling me in advance. Yes. And if I see something I'm not comfortable with, I leave. And you do nothing to stop that. Yes, she looked at him. You're agreeing very quickly. Because you're not asking for anything unreasonable, he said. And because he stopped, and the pause had that quality again, that slight unguarded opening. I would rather have you there as yourself than anywhere else as a calculation. She filed that. In the section that was getting crowded now, the section for things she wanted to examine more carefully when she was alone and had the distance to see them clearly. I'll think about it, she said. She thought about it for 3 days. She went to work and she came home and she stood in front of the refrigerator and looked at the invitation, and she had long, circular, exhausting conversations with herself in which every answer produced 2 new questions. She was not a woman who was accustomed to uncertainty. She was accustomed to assessment, to clear data, to decisions that followed logically from information. What she was dealing with now was not logical. What she was dealing with was a situation in which every person involved, Dante, Victor, Derek, Vanessa, even herself wanted something. And all those wants were pulling in different directions, and she was the only one standing at the center who had not yet fully committed to a direction of her own. On the 3rd night, Vanessa called again. Emma answered, which surprised them both. The wedding is in 2 weeks, Vanessa said. No preamble this time. I know. Are you coming? Emma said nothing. Emma, I need to know, not for the seating chart. I need to know if there's any version of this where you and I are still. Vanessa's voice broke, not dramatically, just at the edge, the way a voice breaks when a person has been holding it together for a long time and is running out of capacity. I know I don't deserve to ask that. You're right, Emma said. You don't. I know. You took 4 years from me, Vanessa. Not just Derek, the time, the trust. I believed in us. I believed that whatever else happened in my life, you were someone who had my back. And you didn't. Her voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. You had his. Vanessa was crying now, quietly in the way Vanessa cried when she wasn't performing it, small and contained and genuine. I know, she said. I know, and I am sorry, and I understand if that's not enough. I needed you to know that I know. Emma closed her eyes. She thought about 29 years of sisterhood. She thought about shared bedrooms and borrowed clothes and late-night phone calls and the particular irreplaceable shorthand that exists between 2 people who have known each other since before they knew themselves. She thought about all of it, the full weight of it, and she felt it the way she always felt, large things in her chest, deep and heavy and complicated. I'll be at the wedding, Emma said, a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Emma, don't thank me, Emma said. I'm not doing it for you, and I'm not doing it for Derek. I'm doing it because I am not going to be the person who disappears from her own family's life to protect other people's comfort. She paused. And Vanessa, if you ever betray me again in any way for any reason, we are finished. Not paused. Finished. Do you understand me? Yes, Vanessa said barely above a whisper. Then I'll see you in 2 weeks. She called Dante immediately after she hung up. I'm going, she said when he answered. A pause. Emma, I made the decision. You don't get to second guess it now. She paused. I need you to tell me what you need me to know about being in a room with Victor Warrison. Not what to do, what to know. There's a difference. Victor is controlled in public, Dante said. He will be warm. He will treat you like an old friend. He will say things that are pleasant on the surface and loaded underneath. He tests people in conversation. He asks questions designed to reveal what you want so he can calculate what you're vulnerable to. Do not tell him anything you aren't willing to have used. I know how to manage a conversation, Emma said. I know you do, Dante said. I've been on the receiving end of it. She almost smiled. What about Derek? Derek is his father's son, but without his father's patience, Dante said. He will want to talk to you privately. He'll frame it as concern for you about me. What he actually wants is information. What you know about me, how involved you are. And what should I tell him? Whatever you're comfortable with. You're not a spy, Emma. You're a woman attending her sister's wedding. A pause. I just need you to be in that room, that's all. That's not all, she said quietly. You need Victor to see me with you. Silence. You want him agitated, Emma said. Not Derek, Victor. You want Victor Morrison to see that the woman who was Derek's ex-girlfriend, the woman he came to warn away from you, didn't walk away. You want him to know that I chose to stay, because that tells him something about what I might know and what I might be willing to do, and it puts doubt in his mind at exactly the moment he needs to be certain. Dante was quiet for a moment. Yes, he said, and the word was flat and honest and carried the slight weight of a man who has been caught being precisely who he is. Okay, Emma said. Okay. I said I wanted to be at the table. This is being at the table. She paused. You are coming to the wedding. Emma, you want Victor to see us together. The only way that happens in a controlled setting where I'm not a sitting target is if you're there. So you're coming in as my guest. She paused. Unless you're afraid of Victor Morrison in a church. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. I'll be there, he said. She could have sworn she heard something in his voice in that moment. Something underneath the certainty, something that was not strategy and not control and not the composed, deliberate quality she had cataloged from the first night. Something that was simply plainly his. She didn't name it. She wasn't ready. The week before the wedding, things moved fast. Dante's man, a quiet, compact person named Reyes, who said almost nothing and appeared to be everywhere, at once confirmed that Victor had hired someone to look into Emma's background. Basic surveillance. Who she was, what she had, who she talked to. Dante told her this directly without waiting to manage the delivery, and she appreciated it and said so. And he said, I'm learning, and she said, good, and they moved on. Derek called twice. She didn't answer. He texted once, Emma, please. I know what Ricci is planning. You need to hear me. She read it, set the phone down, went back to making dinner. Vanessa sent her the ceremony details, time, venue, color of the bridesmaid dresses she wasn't expected to wear, name of the hotel where the reception would be held. She signed the text with a small heart emoji. Emma looked at it for a long moment. Then she moved on. 4 days before the wedding, Dante told her he had received a communication from Victor. He wants a meeting, Dante said. They were at his apartment the first time she had been there, and she was sitting at the kitchen table while he stood at the counter with his coffee, and the domesticity of it struck her suddenly and absurdly given the nature of the conversation. Private, before the wedding. What does he want? He's going to offer me something, Dante said. He's done the math on what I have. He knows I'm close to having enough to move on Meridian. He's going to try to buy me off before I can. And will you take the meeting? Yes. Because I want to hear the number he thinks my father's life is worth, Dante said, and his voice was so flat and so final that Emma did not say anything for a full 10 seconds. Then she said, I want to be there. Absolutely not. Dante. Emma. He turned to look at her directly. This is not the table. This is a different room entirely. Victor Morrison in a private meeting is not the same man he is at a wedding reception. He stopped. I will not have you in that room. Because you don't trust me to handle it. Because I don't trust him, Dante said, and what he might do if he understands what you mean to me. The sentence landed between them like something fragile. Emma looked at him. He was looking back, and for once he wasn't managing it, the expression, the implication, the thing the words had just revealed. He was just standing there holding a coffee cup, having said the truest thing he had said since the parking garage. What I mean to you, she said quietly. He set the coffee cup down. Yes, she held his gaze. When did that happen? I don't know exactly, he said. Somewhere between the bus and the part where you told Victor Morrison to go home, and you walked past him without looking back. Something moved across his face. I had a plan, Emma, a very clear, very detailed plan, and you walked into it and you refused to be what I needed you to be, and somewhere in the process of adjusting, he stopped. I stopped adjusting the plan. I started adjusting myself. She stood up from the table. She crossed to the kitchen. She stopped in front of him and she looked up at him the way she looked at everything directly without flinching, with her full attention, and none of the soft, self-protective blur that most people used to make hard things easier. "I am going to say something," she said, "and I need you to hear it without responding immediately." "Can you do that?" "Yes," he said. "I don't know if what I feel for you is real, or if it's the product of being lonely and betrayed and handed at exactly the right moment someone who looked at me like I was worth looking at." She paused. "I don't know if you are a good man who has done difficult things or a dangerous man who is temporarily capable of tenderness. I don't know if this ends with us on the same side or on opposite ones. I don't know any of those things." She held his gaze. "What I know is that I am not walking away from it, because I have walked away from too many things in my life by being sensible, and I am done being sensible about the things that matter." Dante did not respond immediately. He honored the request. He stood with it for a full 10 seconds, looking at her with that open, unguarded expression that she had only seen a few times and that always felt like a door briefly left ajar. Then he said, "I have not let anyone matter to me in 20 years. Because mattering is leverage, and leverage is vulnerability, and I could not afford that." He paused. "I appear to have run out of the ability to choose otherwise." Emma looked at him for another moment. Then she stepped back, put appropriate distance between them, because she was not a woman who moved without thinking, and she was not ready for what was on the other side of that particular step, and she understood herself well enough to know when she was standing at an edge. "The meeting with Victor," she said. "You go, you hear his number, you tell me everything he says." She paused. "And then we go to this wedding together." Dante nodded. "Yes." "And Dante," she stopped at the doorway, "whatever he offers you, whatever the number is." She looked back at him. "It's not enough. It was never going to be enough. You know that." He looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said, "I know." The meeting with Victor happened 2 days before the wedding, and Dante told Emma everything afterward, standing in her kitchen while she made tea. Neither of them was going to drink. Victor had offered money, a significant number enough to retire, Dante said, though he said the word retire the way a person says a word in a language they don't speak. Then Victor had offered something else, a partnership, a legitimate position within Meridian's structure, recognition essentially. The kind of formal acknowledgement that said, "You won, we know you won, come inside." He thought that would work, Emma asked. "He thought it would appeal to the part of me that wanted to be seen," Dante said. "The 11-year-old boy. He read me that far. But he missed the rest." "He missed the restaurant," Dante said simply. "He offered me money and position. He did not offer me back what he took. And he can't, because it doesn't exist anymore, because he tore it down." His jaw was tight. "You cannot compensate someone for a thing that no longer exists. You can only make sure they understand what it could." Emma set down the mugs. She stood at the counter and she looked at him. This man who had walked into her life with a plan that used her and had then somewhere in the execution apparently lost the ability to use her, and she thought about 20 years of a boy becoming a man around a single central wound. "What did you say to him, Bayashin?" she asked. "I told him I would see him at his son's wedding," Dante said. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He's going to move against you before then. He's not going to wait." "I know." "Do you have protection?" Dante looked at her. "Are you asking if I'm safe?" "I'm asking if we're safe," she said. "There is a difference." Something happened in his face. Something she had seen before, but that never stopped landing the slight involuntary fracture of a man who has not been included in a we in a very long time and doesn't know immediately what to do with it. "Reyes has people at the venue," he said. "Nothing visible, just present. And the documents, the communications you need from the system." "I have a contact inside Meridian," Dante said. "Someone who has been waiting for the right moment. The wedding creates enough disruption in Victor's attention that the window opens." "So the wedding does the work," Emma said. "You don't actually need me to do anything." "No," he said. "I don't need you to do anything." She heard it, the specific weight he put on the word need, and she understood that the sentence was not about the plan at all. "Then let's get through the next 2 days," she said. On the morning of the wedding, Emma stood in front of her mirror and looked at herself for a long time. She was wearing a deep blue dress, not the kind that apologized for itself, not the kind that tried to disappear into the background. She had bought it 3 days ago on purpose. She had stood in the store and chosen the version of herself she wanted to walk into that church as, and this was it. Her phone rang. Dante. "I'm downstairs," he said. She looked at herself one more time. She picked up her bag. She walked out without looking at the refrigerator because the invitation was still there, but she didn't need it anymore. She had been carrying the weight of it for weeks, and she was putting it down now, not because she had forgiven anyone, but because she was no longer willing to carry other people's damage into a room on their behalf. She came out of the building and Dante was standing by the car, and he looked at her the way he had looked at her exactly once before on that first night at the restaurant when she had told him a story she had never told anyone, and he had said, "You're not what I expected," and it was the same look. Unguarded, unmanaged, real. "Ready," he said. "No," Emma said honestly. "Let's go anyway." They drove to the church in the kind of silence that is not empty but full loaded with everything that had been said over the past weeks and everything that hadn't been yet, and all the things that were about to happen in the next few hours that neither of them could fully control. Emma watched the city pass outside the window, and she felt surprisingly not anxious. She felt clear. The particular clarity that comes when a person has stopped trying to avoid something and has simply decided to walk through it. They were 3 blocks from the church when Dante's phone rang. He answered, listened, said nothing, hung up. "What?" Emma said. He was looking straight ahead. His jaw was tight and his expression had gone back to the managed, controlled quality she recognized from the beginning, the quality that had learned to worry her precisely because she now knew what was underneath it. "Dante. Victor moved the documents last night," he said. "My contact inside Meridian found out this morning. He's shifting everything to an offshore entity before the wedding is over. If we don't move today," he stopped, "the window closes. Everything I've built for 3 years disappears." Emma was very still. "What do you need?" she said. He looked at her. "Emma, you don't have to." "What do you need?" she said again. He held her gaze. "Derek's credentials. Entered from a device connected to Meridian's system. There is a laptop at the reception, Victor's personal system, which he always brings because he cannot function without access to the accounts. If someone could get to that machine while Victor is occupied, that's a crime," Emma said. "Yes," Dante said. "You're asking me to commit a crime." "No," he said. "I'm telling you what needs to happen. I am not asking you to do it." Emma looked out the window. The church was visible now 1 block ahead, people in formal clothes moving toward the entrance, the normal choreography of a wedding on a Saturday morning, ordinary and significant in the way weddings always are, regardless of the specific complications inside them. "You said you weren't going to use me," she said. "I'm not using you, Mom," he said. "I'm being honest with you. There's a difference. You told me the difference mattered." She turned to look at him. He was watching her with that expression, the one she still couldn't fully classify, the one that had components she didn't have names for. "If I do this," she said slowly, "I am doing it for me. Not for you, not for your plan, not for your father's restaurant." She paused. "I am doing it because Victor Morrison came to my home and tried to move me like a piece, and Derek spent 4 years letting me be invisible, and I am finished being the person that things happen to." Dante said nothing. "Are we clear?" she said. "Yes," he said. "Then park the car," Emma said. "We have a wedding to get through." The car stopped. She opened the door. She stepped out into the cold morning air, and she smoothed the front of her blue dress, and she stood up straight, and for a moment, just a moment, she was not a woman, walking into her sister's wedding, to the man who had betrayed her, accompanied by a man whose motives she still could not fully separate from his feelings. She was just a woman, standing on a sidewalk, choosing to walk forward. Then she took a breath, and she walked toward the church. The church was full. Emma had not expected that to hit her the way it did walking through those doors on Dante's arm, feeling 200 pairs of eyes make the small, involuntary adjustment that happens when something unexpected enters a room. She had prepared for the discomfort of it. She had not prepared for the specific quality of silence that followed the half second where conversation dipped and then recovered the way her Aunt Patricia's mouth opened, and then closed the way Derek's cousin from Baltimore turned and whispered something to the woman beside him. She had not prepared for how completely and thoroughly she would feel every single one of those eyes, and how much to her own surprise she did not care. She held her head exactly as she had decided to hold it that morning in the mirror. Dante's hand was at the small of her back, not possessive, not performative, just present, just there. She was aware of it with the particular hyper-awareness of a person who has been touched carefully after a long time of not being touched carefully. They found seats 6 rows back left side. Emma looked straight ahead. Dante sat beside her without speaking, which was the right thing to do, and she noted that he knew it. Then Victor Morrison turned around. He was in the front row. Father of the groom, dark suit, the kind of composed public face that costs years to perfect. He turned as people do to survey the room before a ceremony begins, and his eyes found Emma with the specific directness of a man who had been watching for her. And then his eyes moved just slightly to Dante, and something happened in his face that no one in that room would have noticed unless they were specifically looking for it. Emma was specifically looking for it. It was not rage. It was not fear. It was the expression of a man who has made a calculation and just discovered the answer is different from what he expected. A recalibration, cold and fast and immediately suppressed. Dante did not look at Victor. He looked at the front of the church. But Emma felt a slight change in him, a settling, a kind of gathering stillness, the way a person goes quiet before something they have been waiting a very long time for. He saw us, Emma said quietly. Yes. Dante said just as quietly. Good, Emma said. The ceremony began. Vanessa walked down the aisle on their father's arm, and Emma watched her sister, the white dress, the carefully composed face, the slight tremor in Vanessa's hands, that no one else would see but that Emma had spent a lifetime learning to read, and she felt something that was not simple. It was not forgiveness. It was not hatred. It was the specific, complicated ache of loving someone who has cost you something irreplaceable, and knowing that both of those things were simultaneously permanently true. Their eyes met. Halfway down the aisle, Vanessa looked at Emma. It lasted 1 second. Vanessa's expression broke open just briefly, just enough gratitude and guilt and relief and grief all at once, compressed into a single look that said more than any conversation they had managed in 4 months. Emma gave her a small single nod. Nothing more. It was not absolution. It was just acknowledgement. I see you, I'm here. We are not finished, you and I, but I am here. Vanessa looked away. She kept walking. She reached Derek at the altar, and he took her hand, and he was smiling, that warm, easy smile Emma had loved for 4 years. And Emma felt it. She did the last clean pull of something she was putting down forever. Not painlessly, but fully. And finally, she breathed out. Beside her, Dante reached over, and without looking at her, without making anything of it, placed his hand over hers on her knee. Just for a moment, just long enough to say, I know, I'm here. She turned her hand over and pressed his once. Then she let go. The ceremony was 34 minutes. Emma counted because counting was what she did when she needed to stay anchored, and she needed to stay anchored because in approximately 2 hours she was going to do something she had never done before in her life, and she needed every part of her mind to be clear and present and not dragged backward into the wreckage of the last 4 months. The reception was at the Aldrich Hotel, 12 minutes away. During the car ride, Dante briefed her in the same tone a surgeon might use to walk through a procedure, calm, specific, no unnecessary words. Victor's laptop will be in the private room off the main hall. He uses it during events because he cannot go 3 hours without checking the accounts. It will be locked, but the password is a sequence Reyes obtained 2 weeks ago. You have 60 seconds from login to navigate to the document management system, locate the Morrison Reed file, and forward it to the address I'm going to give you right now. You memorize it. You don't write it down. He said the email address. She repeated it back once. She had it. What happens after I send it, she asked. It goes to a journalist who has been waiting for it for 14 months, Dante said. Someone with enough credibility and protection that Victor cannot kill the story before it runs. And then Victor Morrison's company becomes a story. Investigations open, the shell structure collapses, Meridian is finished. A pause. Not tonight, the machinery takes time, but tonight is when it starts. And Derek, Emma said. Derek loses his inheritance. Everything he was going to receive, the company, the accounts, the position, it's gone. Dante paused. Your sister will have married a man who has just lost everything his family had. Emma was quiet for a moment. She thought about Vanessa in the white dress. She thought about what she had said 3 weeks ago. I hope he's worth it. She had meant it as a warning. It had turned out to be a prophecy. That's not my doing, Emma said. That's Victor's. He built this. He built it when he tore down a restaurant and thought the cost was someone else's to pay. Yes, Dante said. Then I'm clear, she said. The reception was everything a Morrison event would be: expensive, loud in the way that money is loud, full of people who were performing their enjoyment for each other. Emma moved through it with the composure she had spent 32 years developing, accepting congratulations from people who didn't know quite what to say to her, deflecting her Aunt Patricia's pointed observations about the seating arrangement, navigating the particular social minefield of being the ex-girlfriend in a room built to celebrate the man who replaced her. She did it without a single crack in her surface, because she was Emma Calloway, and surface-level composure was the skill she had mastered before all others. Dante stayed near, but not beside her, close enough to be visibly her companion, far enough to give her room to operate independently. She appreciated that too. She was building, she realized, a very specific vocabulary for the things about him that she appreciated. It was becoming a long list. Victor found her 40 minutes in. She was at the edge of the room, a glass of water in her hand, watching the dance floor when he appeared beside her with the ease of a man who had been waiting for the right moment and had now decided it had arrived. Ms. Calloway, he said, it's good of you to come. Mr. Morrison, she said, I hope there are no hard feelings about my visit to your building, he said, smooth and easy, the public face fully deployed. I was concerned. I may have overstepped. You did, Emma said pleasantly, but I don't hold it against you. He smiled. It did not reach his eyes, which were doing the thing Dante had warned her about: active assessing, running calculations behind the pleasant surface. The man you came with, Victor said. I want you to know that whatever he's told you about his intentions, Victor. She used his first name deliberately, the way she had with everyone tonight who tried to manage her. I think we both know this conversation has already happened, and we both know how it ended. She turned to look at him directly. Enjoy your son's wedding. She walked away. Her heart was running fast, but her feet were steady and her hands were still, and she thought, 60 seconds. I just need 60 seconds. She found the private room 12 minutes later. The door was not locked. Victor apparently did not believe anyone at his son's wedding would be bold enough to enter a room they hadn't been invited to. He was almost right about that. The laptop was open on the table screensaver running. She sat down. She typed the password Dante had given her. The screen opened. She navigated. Her hands were steady in the way they had been steady on that night 4 months ago when she had read the message on Derek's phone, the way they were steady in trauma bays when she was the last functioning person in the room. She found the document management system. She found the Morrison Reed file. It was enormous, hundreds of documents, years of records, and she selected it, opened a new email, typed the address from memory, attached the folder, and pressed send. It took 41 seconds. She stood up, straightened her dress, walked to the door, opened it. Derek was standing in the hallway. She stopped. They were 2 feet apart, and the shock of it was physical. Not the fear of being caught, but the simple, disorienting shock of proximity to someone you had loved and lost and mourned, and were still in some irreducible way not entirely finished grieving. Emma, he said. His voice was low. What were you doing in there? She looked at him. She kept her expression completely neutral. I needed a moment, she said. It's a lot, Derek, being here, you understand. He looked at her for a long moment. His face was complicated. The guilt she had seen in that bedroom 4 months ago was still there underneath the wedding day happiness, and it was not as small as she might have hoped. I'm sorry, he said, for everything. I know it doesn't cover it. No, she said, it doesn't. I want you to be okay, he said, and she believed him, which was the most complicated thing about Derek Morrison. He was not a bad man. He was a weak one. And weak men cause as much damage as bad ones while maintaining the comfort of believing themselves decent. I am okay, she said. I'm actually fine, Derek. More fine than you know. She paused. Congratulations. I mean that. She walked past him. She found Dante near the bar, and she came up beside him and said very quietly, "It's done." He looked at her. She saw at that fractional opening that unguarded instant. "You're all right." Derek was outside the door, she said. He didn't see anything. Dante was very still. "Did he say anything to you?" He apologized, Emma said. "I told him congratulations." She picked up a glass of sparkling water from the bar. "It's done, Dante. The file is sent. Your journalist has it. The rest is machinery." She looked at him. "Can we go?" He looked at her for a moment, then yes. They said nothing on the way to the coat room, said nothing in the elevator, said nothing until they were outside in the cold air, and then Emma stopped walking and turned to face him on the sidewalk and said, "I need to tell you something." "Tell me." "I did not do that for you," she said. "I want to be very clear about that. I did it because Victor Morrison built something corrupt and called it legitimate and used it to take from people who trusted him, and I have spent the last 4 months being surrounded by people who took things and told themselves stories about why it was acceptable. I am finished with that. I did it because I am finished being in proximity to people who take and feel nothing." She paused. "Not for you." Dante was looking at her steadily. "I know," he said, "but I also," she stopped, breathed. "I am aware that somewhere in the last 6 weeks, in the middle of a situation that was not honest from the beginning, something happened that I did not plan for and cannot take back. And I don't want to take it back. I want to be honest about that." She looked at him directly. "I don't know what you are to me exactly. I don't know what this is, but it is something, and I am not pretending otherwise." Dante looked at her for a long moment. The night was cold and the street was quiet, and behind them the hotel was full of people celebrating a marriage built on a foundation that was about to shift, and ahead of them was a road that was not simple and not safe, and not the kind of thing that resolved into easy happiness without cost. "I have been building a wall for 20 years, Dante said, "and I am aware that you have spent the last 6 weeks walking through it like it isn't there." He paused. "I don't know what to do with that yet, but I know I don't want to rebuild it." Emma looked at him. "Then don't," she said. He reached out and touched her face, one hand briefly, with the specific gentleness of a man who is not accustomed to the gesture and is therefore more careful with it than someone who takes it for granted would be. She let him. She did not lean into it or away from it. She just let it be what it was. Then his phone rang. He answered. His face changed. The gentleness went back to wherever it lived when it was not visible, and the man she had first seen on that bus, controlled final, impossible to read, was back in an instant. "What happened?" Emma asked. "Victor just left the reception," Dante said. "Reyes says he took a call 5 minutes ago and walked straight out. He knows." Emma went still. "How I was 41 seconds. Derek didn't see." "Not Derek," Dante said. "Victor has a monitoring alert on the document system. Every access is logged. He knows the file was forwarded." He looked at her. "He will be trying to reach his lawyers right now, and then he will be trying to reach the journalist." "Can he stop it?" "He can try to delay it," Dante said. "He has money and he has contacts, and he will use both. But the journalist has protocols, and the documentation is complete." His jaw was tight. He cannot reverse it. He can only make the next 48 hours unpleasant. "Unpleasant how?" Emma said. Dante looked at her, and she tore out the thing he was deciding whether to tell her, the hesitation that she had learned to recognize and had told him she would not tolerate. "Dante," she said. "He will come after me through you," Dante said. "That's how he operates. He will try to find something, anything that he can use against you professionally, legally, personally. He will try to make the cost of being with me high enough that you walk away. Because if you walk away, my resolve weakens." That is what he believes. Emma was quiet for a moment. "And is he right?" Dante looked at her. "About my resolve weakening, yes. Probably." She was surprised by that, not by the answer, but by the willingness to say it without armor. "Then he's also wrong," she said, "because I'm not walking away, so his theory doesn't hold. Emma, you understand what that means. He will not be pleasant about this. I have stood in rooms where people received news that ended everything they thought their life was," Emma said. "I have held hands and made decisions and stayed present in situations that would have unmade most people. I am not afraid of Victor Morrison's unpleasantness." She paused. I need you to understand that I am not a person who frightens easily. I know you know that. I need you to act like you know that. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Then something happened in his face. Something that was not just the composure settling or the management returning, but something deeper. Something that moved through him the way conviction moves through a person who has just understood something they had been circling for a long time. All right, he said. All right, she said. His phone rang again. Ricky is. He answered, and this time as he listened, his expression did not change, but she could read him well enough now to know that whatever was being said was significant. He hung up. The journalist is running the story tonight, he said. Not tomorrow, tonight. Victor called him, directly tried to threaten him. It accelerated the timeline. He paused. By morning, Meridian Capital is a story. By the end of the week, it's an investigation. Emma absorbed that. Derek doesn't know yet. No. Vanessa doesn't know. No. She thought about her sister in the white dress. She thought about the look they had exchanged halfway down the aisle. She thought about 29 years in the borrowed clothes and the late-night phone calls, in the irreplaceable shorthand, in the coat on the kitchen chair, and all the ways a person can love someone and be failed by them, and love them still complicated and unresolved and real. She's going to call me, Emma said. When this comes out, she's going to call me and she's going to be devastated and she's going to need... She stopped. You don't have to be there for her, Dante said. After everything she did, I know I don't have to, Emma said. That's not the same as whether I will. She looked at him. She is my sister. What she did to me was real. What she is to me is also real. Those two things exist at the same time. I'm not going to pretend one of them isn't there. Dante was quiet for a moment. Then he said very quietly, you are a better person than most. I'm a realistic one, Emma said. There's a difference. They stood on the sidewalk for another moment, the cold air sharp around them. The story already moving through the city in the form of electrons, in encrypted files, in a journalist working against a deadline. The machinery of consequence turning for the first time toward the man who had set it all in motion 20 years ago, without ever believing it would reach him. Then Emma's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Vanessa. She and Dante looked at each other. His expression was steady. Hers was clear. She answered. Emma. Vanessa's voice was not the voice from the ceremony or the careful texts of the last 2 weeks. It was cracked wide open the way a voice sounds at 2 a.m. when everything has fallen at once. Derek just got a call from his father. Victor left the reception. He's saying, Emma, he's saying something happened tonight that someone... A break in her voice. Derek is white. He won't tell me what's happening. Emma, what is going on? Emma breathed. Vanessa, are you somewhere private? The hallway? Yes. Listen to me carefully, Emma said. What is happening tonight has nothing to do with you. It has to do with choices Victor Morrison made 20 years ago and continued making until tonight. Derek is going to have a very hard few days, and you are going to have to decide who you are in that. She paused. That's not my decision. That's yours. Emma, I am not going to tell you everything tonight, Emma said. But I will tell you this. You married a man whose father built an empire and something stolen. The bill came due. That is not your fault. What you do next, that part is. She paused. Call me tomorrow. We will talk. Are you okay? Vanessa asked, and underneath all the fear and the confusion and the collapse of the last hour, Emma could hear it genuine, simple, the question her sister had been asking in one form or another for 29 years. Yes, Emma said, I'm okay. She hung up. She stood with the phone in her hand for a moment. Then she put it in her bag. Dante was watching her. You told her to call you tomorrow. Yes. Knowing what tomorrow looks like. Yes, Emma said. She's still my sister. And sisters are not things you throw away because they cost you something. They're things you put down for a while and then pick back up and carry differently. She looked at him. You wouldn't know about that, but I do. He looked at her for a long moment. No, he said, I wouldn't. Something passed between them in that moment. Not romantic, not strategic. Just the plain, unadorned acknowledgement of two people who had arrived at the same place from entirely different directions and were against all reasonable probability standing on the same side of it. What happens now? Emma asked. For you, after Victor, after Meridian, after the plan is finished. What happens to Dante Ricci when there's no longer a 20-year mission to organize everything around? He was quiet for a moment. It was the first time she had asked him a question he appeared to genuinely not have an answer for. I don't know, he said. That's honest, she said. You asked for honest. I did. She looked at him. For what it's worth, I think a man who built a wall for 20 years and then stopped rebuilding it has more room than he realizes. She paused. For whatever comes next. He looked at her with that expression, the one she had been cataloging, and could now read finally with something close to fluency. It was not strategy. It was not management. It was a man standing on the other side of the thing he had carried his entire adult life, looking at the space it had occupied, not yet sure what to do with the emptiness, but no longer afraid of it. Come on, Emma said. Take me home. They drove in the quiet that was theirs, now the specific earned quiet of two people who have been through something together and have stopped needing to fill it. The city moved past the windows lit and indifferent and continuous, doing what cities do, regardless of the private earthquakes happening inside the cars and buildings and apartments contained within them. Emma looked out the window and thought about a Tuesday morning when an envelope had arrived at her mailbox. She thought about standing on a sidewalk with a cream cardstock pressed flat against her chest like she was holding something in. She thought about the refrigerator and the sunflower magnet and 11 minutes crying in a parking garage over a song on the radio. She thought about all the versions of herself she had been in the last 4 months. The composed one, the devastated one, the careful one, the one who sat across from a man with dangerous eyes and said, "One coffee, I have to be somewhere by 11, and went anyway and stayed anyway, and chose finally to stop being the person things happened to." She thought about who she was now. She did not have a clean answer. She was not sure she needed one tonight. Dante pulled up in front of her building. He put the car in park. He looked at her. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me," she said. "I told you from the beginning. I did this for myself." "I know," he said. "I'm thanking you for that. For being someone who does things for herself. For not being what I needed you to be when it would have been easier to be it." He paused. It made everything harder and better at the same time. Emma looked at him for a moment. Then she said, "Call me tomorrow." "I will." "And Dante," she stopped with her hand on the door, "when this is all in the newspapers and Victor is finished and the machinery has done what machinery does, I want one dinner that has nothing to do with any of it. No plan, no strategy, no history, just dinner." He looked at her with something that was finally simply warm. "Yes," he said. She got out. She walked into her building. She went upstairs. She stood in her kitchen, and she looked at the refrigerator at the invitation under the sunflower magnet, and she took it down. She held it for a moment, this thing that had started everything, this cream cardstock, with its gold lettering and its breathtaking audacity, and then she walked to the recycling bin, and she put it in. She washed her hands. She made tea. She sat at the kitchen table, and she was not anxious, and she was not devastated, and she was not the invisible woman who had stood at her mailbox 3 months ago and pressed someone else's announcement against her heart like a wound. She was 32 years old, and she was tired, and she was clear, and she was, for the first time in as long as she could remember, exactly where she had decided to be. The plan had been Dante's. The choice had been hers. And Emma Calloway had always been better at choosing than anyone had ever given her credit for.